Number 10. Aluminium phosphide. Aluminium phosphide is a colorless solid that is generally sold as a gray, green, yellow powder due to the presence of impurities arising from the hydrolysis and oxidation. Aluminium phosphide poisoning is one of the major causes of death and health problems, especially in Asia due to metal poisoning. Exposure to this, which is commonly found in pesticides, can be fatal. If ingested, it releases phosphide gas in the presence of HCl in the stomach, which is rapidly absorbed throughout the gastrointestinal tract, leading to systemic toxic effects involving the heart, lung, kidney, liver, with manifestations of serious cardiac arrhythmias, intractable shock, endoceitis, and pulmonary edema. It can also lead to myocarditis, inflammation of the heart walls, and ultimately death. The LD50 value of aluminium phosphide is around 0.15 to 0.5 grams. Number 9. Ethylene glycol. Ethylene glycol is an odorless, colorless, flammable, viscous liquid. It has a sweet taste, but it is toxic in high concentrations. This chemical may be familiar to you as antifreeze, or the thing you put in your motor vehicles during winter times to prevent freezing of liquids that the machine needs to function correctly. It's good for cars, but bad for our bodies. If it gets into our body, it turns into glycolic acid. From there, it attacks our central nervous system and it messes up the pH balance of our body. It and its toxic byproducts first affect the central nervous system, then the heart, and finally the kidneys. All of that leads to cytotoxic effect, which ultimately kills all living cells. Ingestion of sufficient amounts of it is fatal if untreated. It is mainly used for two purposes: as raw material in the manufacture of polyester fibers and for antifreeze formulations. Number 8. Maitotoxin. Maitotoxin, first identified in the 1960s, is a poison that's found on the skin of certain frogs native to South America. It is one of the most potent poisons known to man. It takes just 2 micrograms per kilogram to be fatal, which means that a fully grown man could be killed by a dose no bigger than a few grains of salt. It's a neurotoxin, which means that it exerts its effect by preventing neurons from sending electrical messages to one another, causing paralysis and eventually death. If the poison enters your bloodstream, you're likely to be dead in under 10 minutes, which means it works fast. It can be found in certain species of beetles, birds, and frogs, and there's currently no antidote, so stay away. Number 7. VX. VX is a nerve agent with the consistency of engine oil. It emerged from the ICI's research into new insecticides in the early 1950s, but proved too toxic to use in agriculture. VX kills by interfering with the transmission of nerve messages between cells. This requires a molecule called acetylcholine. After acetylcholine has passed on its message, it needs to be broken down. Otherwise, it'll keep sending the message by an enzyme catalyst called acetylcholinesterase. VX stops this enzyme from working, so muscle contractions go out of control and you die of asphyxiation. Nerve agents were made by both sides during the Cold War, but VX became particularly well known after featuring in Hollywood blockbuster film The Rock. Only one person is known to have been killed by VX, a former member of the Shrinko cult, though some 4,000 sheep were killed by it in an accident in Skull Valley, Utah in 1968. It has an LD50 as little as 3 micrograms per kilogram, although some reports suggest the figure is a little higher. Number 6. Dimethylmercury. Dimethylmercury was first identified in 1858 and is a simple little molecule consisting of central mercury atom bonded with 2 methyl groups. The toxic effects of mercury are known to pretty much everyone, but few are aware that the liquid metal on its own is actually fairly harmless. It can't bind to any tissue on the body on its own, therefore it can't be absorbed. Dimethylmercury, on the other hand, is a colorless liquid that is highly volatile, reactive, and flammable. It is one of the strongest known neurotoxins with a quantity of less than 0.1 milliliters capable of inducing severe mercury poisoning, resulting in death. It is easily absorbed through the skin into the blood and transported all around the body where it can exert its toxic effect. The true dangers of of working with this came to light in 1996 when chemist Karen Wetherhahn accidentally spilled 2 drops of the chemical on her glove while working in a lab. Assuming that the latex would prevent the chemical from coming into contact with her skin, she didn't worry about it. But after a few months, she began to exhibit signs of cognitive impairment. Slurred speech, difficulty thinking, and fatigue soon gave way to a coma. After 5 months, her coma finally ended in death, and the result was her coming into contact with this chemical. Number 5. Potassium cyanide. Potassium cyanide, first identified in 1752, is a type of salt, but not the kind you'd season your food with. It's colorless, similar in appearance to sugar, and it's highly soluble in water. It's incredibly toxic and has gained notoriety for being the choice ingredient in pills for spies and soldiers around the world. The moist solid emits small amounts of hydrogen cyanide due to hydrolysis, which may smell like bitter almonds. Not everyone, however, can smell cyanide. The ability to do so is a genetic trait. The taste of potassium cyanide has been described as acrid and bitter, with a burning sensation. The nicest thing that can be said about this is that it offers a quick death. It disables cellular respiration, the process by which cells make energy, by inhibiting an enzyme that's essential in ATP production. ATP is the primary energy currency of the body, and the ability to make it is the key to, well, living. Within a few minutes of consuming potassium cyanide, victims fall unconscious and then suffer brain death. It can be found in gold mining, organic synthesis, and electroplating. Smaller applications include jewelry for chemical gliding and buffering, and thankfully there is an antidote, but you'd have to act quick. Number 4. Chlorine Trifluoride. Chlorine Trifluoride, also known as Substance N, was discovered by German scientists during the Second World War. The German party initially intended to have their soldiers use it to melt through Allied bunkers, but after years of research, they determined it was just too unstable. That's right, the chemical was too destructive for the German party. Its colorless, poisonous, corrosive, and extremely reactive gas condenses into a pale greenish yellow liquid, the form in which it's mostly often sold. It's extremely volatile and will react explosively with just about anything. It's been known to set fire to glass, sand, rust, and of course, people. It can even cause asbestos, one of the most fire retardant substances in existence, to catch fire. The United States briefly tinkered with it and attempted to transport a ton into a specialized tanker. This turned out to be a horrible idea as the tanker crashed and the substance spilled out onto the concrete floor of a warehouse and set fire to it. It ate through the concrete completely, along with a good few feet of dirt and gravel beneath. This chemical is used in plasma cleaning and etching operations in the semiconductor industry, and nuclear reactor fuel processing as a component in rocket fuels, and other industrial operations. Fluoroantimonic acid. Fluoroantimonic acid is the strongest acid in the world. Ever heard of sulfuric acid? Well, it's about 10 quadrillion times stronger than that. The compound can eat through plastics and glass and can melt the skin from your bones and still want more. The only way it can be stored is in Teflon containers, which are resistant to its corrosive effects. When studying it, science aren't even able to use a normal glass beaker unless they dilute it by a factor of thousands. This acid also reacts violently with water. Due to this, it's fatal if it's swallowed or inhaled, and it can cause severe burns if it comes in contact with skin. This acid is considered a super acid, so stay away. Number 2. Dimethyl cadmium. Dimethyl cadmium is considered by many chemists to be the most toxic chemical known to man. It's a colorless, high toxic liquid that fumes in air. Because cadmium is lighter than mercury, the organic compound is more volatile. It absorbs instantly into the bloodstream and rips apart the organs that need the highest supply of blood, including the heart and lungs. If by some miracle, a person manages to survive the initial exposure, the danger certainly isn't over. Dimethyl-cadmium is highly carcinogenic, meaning that it causes cancer. If that isn't bad enough, it also explodes in water and decomposes into dimethyl calcium peroxide, which is highly explosive. It can easily be called the most dangerous chemical known to man. Due to this, majority of the world's chemists refuse to work with it, and it's no surprise. Number 1. Botulinum toxin. Scientists differ about the relative toxicities of substances, but they seem to agree that botulinum toxin, produced by anaerobic bacteria, is the most toxic substance known to man. Its LD50 is tiny. At most, 1 nanogram per kilogram can kill a human. It was first identified as a cause of food poisoning due to incorrectly prepared sausage in the late 18th century Germany. There are several botulinum toxins, with type A being the most potent. These are polypeptides consisting of over 1,000 amino acid molecules joined together. They cause muscle paralysis by preventing the release of the signaling molecule, the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Botulinum toxins are among the most potent toxins known. Intoxication can occur naturally as a result of either a wound or intestinal infection, or by ingesting foreign toxin in food. This causes the disease botulism, which can result in difficulty breathing, muscle paralysis, and death.
Starting us off at number 10, we have botulinum toxin A, also more commonly known as Botox. You might be thinking, what? How is Botox toxic if people by the millions are putting it in their face? Microdoses of the substance in plastic surgery or just aesthetic procedures relax and sort of paralyze your muscles, which in turn reduces wrinkles, slims your jaw, and more depending on where you're injecting it and why. My mom's a dermatologist, so I'm around Botox talk all the time, so this really doesn't faze me, but believe it or not, it's still one of nature's most toxic substances, and any more than a microdose is sure to kill you. 1 gram of it can kill 1 million people, and a couple kilograms, that can wipe out the world. At number 8, we have strychnine. Now this substance is mostly used as a pesticide to kill birds and rats, and it's extremely toxic. If inhaled, swallowed, or absorbed, it causes a certain kind of poisoning that leads to severe muscle contractions and then death by asphyxia. The muscle contractions get so bad that your body will actually contort to the point of broken bones and torn muscles and ligaments. Symptoms occur 15 to 60 minutes after contact, and the minimum lethal dose for a human is anywhere from 30 to 120 milligrams. But fun fact, they come in seed form, so the poison is only effective if the seed is chewed or crushed before you swallow it. If you swallow the seed whole, you may not get poisoned, so there's that. Filling at number 7 slot is the inland taipan. This extremely dangerous snake has an 80% mortality rate and can inflict what is considered to be the most toxic bite of any snake. The venom of 1 bite from these slithering beasts is enough to kill 100 humans. Like most snake venoms, organ failure, nausea, diarrhea, etc. then all quickly escalate until certain death, unless of course the antivenom is readily available and administered rapidly. Found in Australia, these snakes are considered shy and are found in extremely remote areas, so luckily they rarely encounter humans, but if you're that unfortunate 1% of people that does encounter it, good luck to you. Now at number 6 is Maitotoxin. This highly potent toxin is found in single-celled organisms in the ocean, which then attach themselves to fish. Exposure to this chemical is simply a case of wrong place, wrong time. If you see a bloom of algae in the ocean, this chemical could very much be present. One of the most complex non-protein molecules found to be produced by any organism. Maitotoxin causes rapid heart failure and is nearly impossible to treat. Nearly impossible means basically impossible, and that means a surefire death, which is a no bueno. No bueno, amigo, muerto, muerte. That means death, bitch. Coming in at number 5 is potassium cyanide. So this highly toxic compound actually looks like sugar and dissolves quite easily. It's known for being the suicide chemical, and I believe it was used by Jim Jones during the Jonestown massacre. Another infamous victim of this pill was actually Eva Braun, Hitler's longtime partner. Apparently it tastes bitter and acrid and sort of causes a burning sensation. The effects of potassium cyanide and sodium cyanide are the exact same, by the way, for anyone that was wondering. When taken in pill form, you're likely to die in just a few minutes. At first you lose consciousness, then you may convulse, and then finally you die when your brain dies, also known as cerebral hypoxia. Now at number 4 is ricin. This one is produced in the seeds of castor oil, paint, and a few rice grains worth of this toxin can kill you. Even the dust of this stuff coming into contact with your eyes can be fatal. Ricin did not come to play around. Ricin effectively blocks the assembly of amino acids into protein in the body, which causes the initial symptoms of pain, inflammation, and then progressively progresses into severe nausea and diarrhea. Organ failure and shock due to blood loss via the excess diarrhea and vomiting cause almost certain death. But there is a loophole. Oral exposure to ricin is a lot less toxic, so at least there's that saving grace. Antidotes are very few and far between, so I think it's best to avoid ricin at all costs. Filling at number 3 slot is Maitotoxin. This cardio and neurotoxic chemical is found in some beetles, a few bird species found in New Guinea, and some Colombian frogs. Quite eclectic, isn't it? This shit is extremely potent and poisonous and usually lives on the frog's skin. With no antidote, should you get infected by this stuff, there's little to no chance of survival, so I mean, those are slim pickings, you feel? This chemical mainly attacks the brain and heart, it stops your nerves and muscles from functioning, and fun fact, it was used in the past for poison arrow tips. The more you know. Now at number 2 we have the chemical VX, aka acetylcholine. Now if you've ever watched First 48 or any murder docu-series, you have most likely heard this stuff mentioned before. You know those movies where something's just poured into a person's drink and after a sip they effectively just die on the spot? That's VX for you. Dramatic in its finishing fashion if I do say so myself. I like it. It was initially developed as a nerve agent for warfare and it continues to serve just that purpose. Symptoms can be summed up as fatal muscle contractions, and while there are effective antidotes, they must be administered within a short period after exposure and usually don't prevent at least some permanent damage. So you're not walking away unscathed, that's for damn sure. And finally at number 1 is polonium. While extremely rare and only naturally found in small amounts in uranium ore, a lethal dose for a human is only 7 trillionths of a gram. Like, are you kidding me? That's nothing. Can you even see that with the naked eye? I didn't think so. Found in extremely trace amounts on tobacco leaves, this stuff is considered responsible for the associated lung disease as well. Both toxic and highly radioactive, should you be unlucky enough to come in contact with polonium, there's simply no hope for you, so you may as well say your goodbyes, rewrite your will if you have to, and regret all the things you didn't check off on your bucket list. Sucks to suck.
Starting off this countdown, we have the toxic dirt. Turns out that Mars is covered in toxic chemicals. Sorry Elon, but there goes your plan to make Mars habitable for humans. NASA first figured this out in 2008 when their Phoenix lander landed on Mars and collected some soil samples. They then found out that the soil contains high levels of perchlorate, which is toxic to humans. Even very small amounts of it are considered highly toxic. The substance is known to severely affect our thyroid glands and can disrupt the function of it. So yeah, maybe living on Mars isn't gonna be the best for us. Coming in at number 9, we have space poison. Back in 1969, a man named L. Snyder and his colleagues discovered formaldehyde in space. Formaldehyde is known to cause irritation of the skin, eyes, nose, and throat. High levels of exposure can also cause certain types of cancers. It's a highly toxic and poisonous substance, which is why it was given the name space poison. Coming in at number 8, we have the toxic fungus. Yes, there is fungus in space and it's living all over the International Space Station. Not only that, but when spacecrafts come back from space, they are covered in this fungi as well. A study done of this has declared that it is Aspergillus flavus, which is known to produce carcinogenic and immune suppressing compounds. This fungi is known to form when it's stressed, and obviously space is a very stressful situation, so it's the perfect environment for it to thrive. However, there's still a lot that scientists don't know about it. They are currently studying the toxic effects that it has on astronauts. In our 7th spot, we have ammonia. Now this one is kinda cheating, but I don't care, I'm putting it on this list anyways. One of the deadliest things found in space actually comes from the spacecraft itself, and that's ammonia. Liquid ammonia is used to keep the station's electricity generating solar panels cool. However, ammonia is highly toxic. Astronauts are told by NASA trainers that if they smell ammonia, then there's no point running any procedures because they're just gonna die anyways. Of course, they will still run the procedures because they're not gonna give up hope that fast. Basically, if ammonia gets inside the spacecraft, well, it's hella corrosive and it's a huge irritant to their body. That's why if they're fixing anything outside the craft and get exposed to ammonia, then they have this huge procedure that they need to go through in order to prevent it getting into their craft. In our 6th spot, we have hydrazine. So hydrazine is another chemical that astronauts bring into space with them. Raw hydrazine is used to fuel the shuttle's auxiliary power units, whereas monomethyl hydrazine fuels the shuttle's maneuvering systems. Well, both of these chemicals are flammable and are highly irritating, especially to the eyes, skin, and respiratory system. Upon exposure, they can cause vomiting, diarrhea, tremors, convulsions, and permanent damage to internal organs.
How great is that? We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the toxic grease. According to scientists, space is full of dirty toxic grease, but obviously it's not the grease that we're thinking of. Basically, the Milky Way is filled with this fine mist of grease-like molecules. How much, you ask? Well, enough to fill 40 trillion packs of butter. Yeah, that much. And obviously it's highly toxic to us. Scientists compare it to like greasy soot here on Earth. I swear, space just keeps getting more and more interesting and also a little bit scary. In our 4th spot, we have Pluto's poisonous heart. Back in 2015, it was revealed that Pluto's heart-shaped sea is actually filled with poisonous ice. It's made up of frozen carbon monoxide and methane. This is, of course, poisonous to humans. But what's interesting is that the icy mountains on Pluto are made up of water ice bedrock. So scientists believe that the carbon monoxide and methane ice are found on the surface above the bedrock. I actually found a really funny meme that's like, Pluto's heart-shaped sea is filled with poison after NASA kept rejecting it as a planet. In our 3rd spot, we have the toxic meteorites. So turns out that when you heat up meteorites on Earth, they'll release pretty toxic water. This water is filled with sulfur, arsenic, selenium, tellurium, cadmium, antimony, and mercury. Mercury and sulfur having the highest concentration. And for some reason, scientists are trying to find a way to purify meteorites' water. Why? Are they thinking of like bottling it up and then selling it for a stupid amount of money, being like, this is a cure-all, it's from space? I don't know, probably. Seems like it. In our 2nd spot, we have the moon dust. Moon or lunar dust is made up of very tiny and sharp toxic particles. The particles are 50 times smaller than a strand of human hair, and if inhaled, it can stay in your lungs for months. The longer the particles stay in your lungs, the more dangerous it is. Long-term exposure can destroy lung and brain cells. In fact, a number of astronauts have gotten very sick off of this dust. When the Apollo astronauts returned from the moon, they had moon dust all over their spacesuits. It made their throat sore and eyes water. The particles are so fine, but they're sharp like glass, so it felt like they were constantly breathing in sharp pieces of glass. Not fun. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the cyanide. In 2012, NASA's Cassini spacecraft spotted a weird cloud on Saturn's moon Titan. After conducting a number of tests on it, they realized that this Egypt-sized cloud is made up of cyanide gas, poison that on Earth is used to kill rats and even whales. That's just insane to me. Now, this cloud is actually composed of hydrogen cyanide ice, which is weird because at this location on the moon, it should be too warm for the chemical to condense into ice. But I guess not, so that's kind of freaky. The discovery suggests that the air above Titan is much cooler than scientists previously thought. Scientists are still studying this to get a better understanding of what's going on up there.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the comb sea star. These guys may appear to be like sweet little Peach from Finding Nemo, but they most definitely are way more terrifying and dangerous. Also sometimes referred to as the sand sifting star, these guys are a sea star that is the most widespread in their genus, which is found throughout the Indo-Pacific region. These guys are bottom dwellers, which usually means if you're coming into contact with one, it's likely accidental, so it's super important to be on the lookout for them. These guys have spines on them, which can obviously cause injury to the skin, and their venom is in a gelatinous form around the spiny areas. The venom they possess is a powerful neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, and since it's the most well known of all of the marine toxins, it will definitely be one we talk about again today. This neurotoxin is a sodium channel blocker, which means that it prevents the nervous system from carrying messages, which then translates to your muscles being prevented from contracting in response to nervous stimulation. If a lethal dose of this toxin has been ingested, symptoms will likely be present within 17 minutes, and they include things like gastrointestinal symptoms, sweating, headache, tremor, paralysis, and eventual death. This is all to say, although these guys might look relatively harmless, those spikes are scarier than any of us might have thought. In our number 9 spot today, we have pufferfish. These are a fish that isn't necessarily a major threat to you if you're casually swimming on by, but because they're considered a culinary delicacy, their toxicity gets gets a little bit more dicey if you aren't quite sure what you're doing. If prepared incorrectly, the ingestion of pufferfish can be lethal because they contain the same powerful neurotoxin, tetrodotoxin, and some certain puffers also contain saxitoxin, which is another powerful neurotoxin. This one is also a sodium channel blocker, and it acts on voltage-gated sodium channels of neurons, which then prevents normal cellular function, which then leads to paralysis. When a lethal dose of pufferfish has been ingested, first the tongue and lips will become numb, which will then be followed by dizziness and vomiting, with the whole body slowly going numb. Eventually the toxin will paralyze the diaphragm, which will stop the person who has ingested it from breathing. If someone lives longer than 24 hours after ingestion, it is likely that they will survive, although coma might last still for several days. While the exact source of where pufferfish get their toxin has been long debated, at the moment the most widely accepted answer is that it is coming from a bacteria that exists in their intestinal tract. In our number 8 spot today we have the yellow boxfish. These guys are a species of boxfish that can be found in the reefs throughout the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean, as well as the southeastern Atlantic Ocean, and to be honest, they aren't necessarily the most poisonous fish on this list, but its method of poisoning can be a cause for concern. When threatened or even just stressed out, these guys release their poison, tetrodotoxin, which we all know about, but the release is less than strategic. There's essentially no aim and they just shoot it out, swim away, and hope for the best. This is kind of hilarious in theory, but unfortunately this causes a lot of accidental poisonings to both human and other fish alike. In our number 7 spot today we have water hemlock. Water hemlock is a genus of 4 species of highly poisonous plants that like to grow in wet meadows, on the banks of streams, or really any wet and marshy area. Sometimes referred to as cowbane or poison parsnip, the members of this genus contain a toxin that is called sicutoxin. This causes central nervous system stimulatory effects like seizures. The toxin is present in all parts of this plant, however it is most concentrated in the roots of it. The ingestion of this plant can be fatal in humans, and there are actually reports in medical literature that document severe poisonings and death from water hemlock as far back as 1670. Although less common, poisoning can still occur through skin contact, so this plant is surely one that is best to stay away from entirely. In our number 6 spot today we have the flower urchin. These guys are a widespread and commonly encountered species of sea urchin from the Indo-West Pacific. They like to make their homes in coral reef and seagrass beds or rocky and sandy environments. The toxins within the flower urchin are called contractin A, which is found to interfere with the transmission of signals at nerve endings and also causes red blood cells to clump, and the other is a protein toxin called petotoxin, which can cause muscle relaxation, sedation, and anesthetic coma, and at high doses can cause convulsions and death. These urchins don't have spines or spikes to deliver their venom, and instead it is done through what is called globiferous pedicellari. These guys possess really powerful sensors, and when disturbed they snap shut and inject venom. The amount of venom is said to be directly related to their size, so if you happen to encounter one, I guess I hope it's a small one? I don't know. I just hope we can all steer clear of them entirely. In our number 5 spot today we have the button polyp. Also known as green sea mats, these guys are a zoanthid that can usually be found in the shallow reef zones of tropical regions spanning all the way from the Caribbean to southeastern Brazil, but these corals are also often recommended to new marine aquarium owners, but this isn't necessarily great because the health risks associated with owning one can often be underestimated. The most common form of poisoning from these guys is by eating contaminated seafood, but it can also come from direct contact with the skin, eyes, or by inhaling aerosols or steam vapor associated with them. These guys contain palytoxin, which is considered to be one of the most poisonous non-protein substances known, and it is extremely dangerous because it can affect every cell type in the body. Symptoms can range from flu-like symptoms to extreme severe ones, and unfortunately there's no known antidote for it, just general medical treatment and supportive care. In our number 4 spot today we have the xanthid crab. These are a family of crabs sometimes known as gorilla crabs, mud crabs, or pebble crabs, but whatever you call them, they're highly poisonous and contain toxins that cannot be destroyed by cooking. The toxins they possess are similar to the tetrodotoxin and the saxitoxin that are seen in the pufferfish, and it is thought that they are also produced by a bacteria living in symbiosis with the crab. Many members of this crab family are brightly colored, as it is said to be a warning to potential predators of the poison that lurks inside of them. The good news is that they are poisonous poisonous rather than venomous, so it can't sting or bite, but eating them can lead to death. In our number 3 spot today, we have the stonefish. These guys are one of the most venomous known fish, and although they are primarily marine, some species are known to live in rivers. Most of these guys can be found in coral reefs near the tropical Pacific and Indian Oceans. The name of these fish comes from their camouflage color, which allows them to blend in with their surroundings, but unfortunately because they're so good at disguising themselves, swimmers may not notice or see them and then inadvertently step on them, which can cause a whole slew of issues. When a stonefish is disturbed, it will inject an amount of venom proportional to the amount of pressure it's feeling, and this venom is coming from the glands at the base of their needle-like dorsal fin. The sting of a stonefish is said to be extremely painful, and if left untreated, it certainly can be fatal. The poison within the venom that a stonefish possesses is a proteinaceous toxin called verrucotoxin. The symptoms of this poison include respiratory weakness, damage to the cardiovascular system, convulsions, and paralysis. Although there are many studies that have been done on this toxin, much about how it works and the exact mechanisms of it are not yet fully understood, which just places this already terrifying creature in a cloud of mystery. In our number 2 spot today, we have stingrays. Stingrays are most common in coastal, tropical, and subtropical marine waters throughout the world, and they are a group of sea rays, which are a kind of fish that are actually related to sharks. There are a wide variety of stingrays, but most of them are not normally aggressive and usually only attack when provoked. Stingrays can have anywhere from 1 to 3 blades, and when contact with the spinal blade or blades is made, it causes immediate trauma to the area with a cut, swelling, and muscle cramps from the venom. The venom from a stingray contains the toxins cystatins and galactin. Galactin causes cell death in the victims, while the other one inhibits defense enzymes. This combination can lead to increased blood flow in the superficial capillaries and cell death. In our number 1 spot today, we have the blue-ringed octopus. These creatures look absolutely stunning, but you should absolutely stay as far away as possible from them. Found in the waters of Australia and Japan, the blue-ringed octopus is just as dangerous as it is unbelievable. These guys can be identified by their yellowish skin that is spotted with rings of gorgeous blue and black that change colors dramatically when the animal feels threatened. Despite their relatively small size, these guys are one of the most venomous marine animals in the world. If provoked, they may bite you. The bite is said to be pretty painless, with many people not even realizing they've been bit until the respiratory depression and paralysis sets in. That's right, these are another creature that has venom locked and loaded with tetrodotoxin, but the blue-ringed octopus would put some of the other creatures on this list to shame. These guys are carrying enough venom to kill 26 adult humans within minutes. One thing I failed to mention about tetrodotoxin before is that, as of right now, there's no known antidote, so it's really a game of luck if you encounter one of these creatures. Sleep tight with that information.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Blister Beetle. Great name right off the bat, sounds like a DC Comics supervillain. Blister Beetle, ugh. These little guys are coated in cantharidin. Back in the day, medical experts would use cantharidin to induce blisters. That was a common remedy. Painful of course, but quite common. Blister beetles are tiny and they often sport a metallic green or blue wing cover. They look great, but you don't wanna touch these guys. If a bird tries to eat one of these, it's gonna get ugly pretty quick. That beetle will not stay down. That beetle will come right back up immediately and then continue on his beetle way. On the outside, cantharidin causes a dermatitis reaction, and if you accidentally eat one of these, just like that bird, it's most likely going to be your last meal. Yeah, don't eat bugs. Period. Let's move on. Number 9, Tarantula Hawk Wasp. Okay, there's another name. Remember when we had to worry about killer wasps for like 3 months? Is that still a threat? Are they still out there? Is that a false alarm? Can we get some follow-up, please? Well, here's a wasp that you definitely want to avoid. I'll tell you this one for free. The Tarantula Hawk Wasp. As if its name wasn't horrifying enough, let's talk about it. These wasps are so huge, for starters. They have bright orange wings, long legs, their bodies reach about 2 inches long, which is horrible already, and they're found all over the world, except for Europe. So if you live there, nice. Must be nice. No giant wasps to worry about. No Tony Hawk wasps, so I gotta come in and bite you. They're most commonly found in the Grand Canyon, believe it or not. Yep, they just hang out there and eat tarantulas. Great, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. It has one of the worst stings on the planet. Its pain was described as instantly debilitating. See, bullet ant stings, they can last 24 hours and they suck. These ones, they only last 5 minutes. But it's ranked as the highest on the pain index. So I have to ask, would you rather have the worst pain for 5 minutes or just a really, really bad pain for 24 hours? Chris?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Me too. Just get it done with, you know? I don't want to wait like hour 6. I'd be like, oh, please, this sucks. Number 8, Arsenic. The deadly poison that supposedly took out George III of England, and Napoleon Dynamite. What happened? What were they doing? Were they sniffing around? What are they doing? What is arsenic, and why have we all heard about this before? Well, arsenic is incredibly toxic in its inorganic form. Arsenic is a natural component in the ground, so it causes contaminated water, which leads to arsenic poisoning. So most of the time, you'll develop skin cancer from it. Arsenic has an LD50 around 13 milligrams. The Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry has arsenic on its priority list of hazardous substances still. It's still a top dog, it's still a problem. Exposure to toxic metals is a common problem we're still facing today. We're not out of the woods yet, so had to throw it on this list. It sounds old though, right? It's like, oh, arsenic and old lace. Nope, very real. King George III's like, I can tell you, it's real. Number 7, the Indian red scorpion. Scorpions are extremely underrated. These things are like lobsters mixed with snakes, mixed with spiders, just packed full of venom. It's actually horrible. I'm glad I've never seen one in real life, even in a zoo or anything. I've never seen a scorpion. I just realized that. Wow, okay. Indian red scorpions are of course found in India, and they're also found in Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. They're the most venomous out of the entire scorpion species. The fatality rate is around 40% if you get hit by one of these, so even if you don't die, it's gonna suck. I don't know how else to say that. You'll know if it's an Indian red scorpion because you'll start to sweat like crazy right off the bat, you'll start throwing up, you'll start convulsing, and most likely your body will immediately shut down. It's all physical stuff. You'll pass out, so maybe you won't know if you get bit. Their venom is also on the science side. Yeah, scientists are trying to figure out a way to fight cancer with it, so we don't hate them completely. You know, we're like, hey, stop it, but come here. What are you doing? Let me study you. Don't bite me, but let me see your Number 6, Black Widow. Another scary bum, another natural scary bum you want to avoid. We've all heard about this one at some point, but just how bad is the Black Widow? Like, will you die? Yeah, probably. The Black Widow is not only extremely painful, but it's also incredibly toxic. At first, you won't even feel anything. You might think you were hit by a mosquito, if that. There'll be slight irritation on the skin, nothing too bad, nothing like the red scorpion. You won't notice at first. But then an hour goes by, you'll start to be confused, you'll be dizzy, you'll be nauseous, your breathing will become difficult, all because of this little thing right here. And her little butt, her little evil butt. See, male Black Widows are much smaller and contain much less venom than the female. Yeah, see? Ladies are bad, Chris. They're bad news. A fact that you may have heard already, but I have to mention it of course, is that the female Black Widow will actually begin eating the male while they're doing their, spider mating thing. Could you imagine that? How, I trusted you, and now you're eating me? Get out of here. This event, this horrible event, is called Lactrodectus mirabilis. Yeah, it sounds like a Harry Potter dark magic spell. It's when you little midnight snack. Number 5, the hooded patooey. I bet you didn't expect a bird to be on this list. Yeah, too busy looking down. Now we gotta look up too. I already don't like birds. This is so scary. The hooded patooey sounds mysterious. Why is he wearing a hood? He's wearing a hood because he lives in the rainforest. That's why, of course. These little guys, I'll admit, they're pretty cute. They have an orange-red chest with a dark black head. They're beautiful birds that are found mainly on the island of New Guinea. Now, some say this bird is scary looking. I mean, I think that's just to negate people from going towards them. I disagree, it's a cute bird, but you should still avoid the hooded patooey. If you see these things, just honestly duck. I don't know what to do. Duck, hide. Its skin and feathers are covered in a neurotoxin called homobatrachotoxin. If this bird landed on your shoulder and started to whisper secrets in your ear, I mean, sure, you're gonna feel like a Disney princess for a hot minute, but eventually those toxins will start to cause numbness, even just skin contact. These birds are literally taking baths in radioactive puddles. Their neurotoxins come from the beetles that they eat. And you know which beetles I'm talking about, right? You're too good. Number 4, comb stars. Ocean life is the scariest thing out there. We're talking about beetles and birds. Yeah, let's look into the sea. This is a nightmare already by itself. We have no idea what's in our oceans. We discover some crazy fascinating fish every year. Some deep sea fish with bioluminescence, like a glowing shark. We have a new glowing shark. How amazing is that? Some are small but mighty natural predators, like the comb star, for example. The comb star is a starfish that contains tetrodotoxin. It's a deadly neurotoxin that can cause paralysis. Imagine having this guy in Finding Nemo. That'd be a quick movie. Per every gram of comb star flesh, there's enough toxin to take out 500 mice. So if you have 500 mice, don't let this guy in your house. Also, what do you do for a living? Number 3, ricin. This deadly chemical can be found in the seeds of castor oil plants. It looks jarringly similar to table salt. That's the biggest ha about this. And an extremely small amount can take you out. It was also the biggest villain in Breaking Bad, really. He sat there silently for seasons at a time, just waiting. waiting for his moment. They also come from castor beans, but unlike toxic plants, you aren't going to run into any ricin in the wild. You know, there's more steps that need to be done before you accidentally poison yourself in mere minutes, so don't worry too much. Once consumed, ricin enters your cells and then prevents them from making the proteins that they need. That's bad news. You're pretty much toast at that point. Depending on if you inhale, ingest, or inject it, the results may vary. Either way though, it's not going to feel good. Georgy Markov, he got taken out by a ricin attack back in 1978. It was a small pellet. He had no clue. It's horrible. So deadly. Number 1, poison dart frog. I saved the cutest for last. Yeah, you'd never expect this little guy to be the absolute deadliest frog on the planet. But look at that smile. He's hiding something. You can just tell. Frogs look so mysterious. They're always so wet. That's the sound they're making. If it's named didn't tip you off already, the poison dart frog is one of the deadliest animals on Earth. Its shiny yellow skin will certainly attract the eye, but if you decide to, catch one of these slippery boys, its poison will, you're absolutely done. Its poison can kill many, many, many adults. Indigenous hunters figured this out early and they coated the tips of their arrows or darts in this exact toxin. They would just grab a frog and be like, thank you, see ya. He's like, he's part of the war, he's helping. The toxin created here is called batrotoxin. Another animal that has it was the hooded patui. Yeah, so many animals have this. I'm always like hiding them from you and then pulling them out later. There's literally poison everywhere. Thanks for watching, that's a good time right there.